Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited that you were able to join us tonight. And for those who are not and are going to watch this a little later, you are in for a treat. Tonight, we have Ms. Tonier Cain Muldrow, who is an advocate and educator. She speaks all over the world on trauma, addiction, incarceration, homelessness, substance abuse, and mental health. She is the CEO and founder of Tonier Cain International, founder and president of Neen Cares Incorporated, creator and producer of the upcoming TV show Restoration, and is featured in the documentary Behind Closed Doors, Trauma Survivors in the Psychiatric System. Tonier is also the founder and publisher of TCI Publishing House and co-producer of the award-winning film Healing Neen. She has published 2 books, Healing Neen, One Woman's Path to Salvation from Trauma and Addiction, and Relationships After Trauma, a guidebook developing and using survival tools to live on life's terms. Tonier has been featured in many articles, including December's 2014 Ebony magazine, and has been a guest on over 17 talk shows. Former Florida Governor Charlie Crist issued a proclamation designating November 1, Tonier's birthday, as Trauma-Informed Care Day in recognition of her contributions and commitment to transforming the way the entire Florida Department of Juvenile Justice serves children, youth, and adults housed in their facilities. She has also been honored with other days in her name and is the recipient of several other awards. I have known Tonier for several years. I reached out to her and asked her to participate in a conference. It has to be at least 15, 17 years now. I don't want to say 20, but it's been a while.
It was like closer to 15, yeah.
15 years. I've known her and watched her just blossom and do all kind of amazing things. I am so happy for her and proud of her. And I just want to say thank you, because I just sent her a quick text and said, hey, would you do this? And she texted me right back. And luckily there was a cancellation and she didn't have to go because she's always on the road. She is an amazing powerhouse woman. I'm really excited to have you here. And I can't wait to hear more about what you're doing. So why don't we start with you just talking a little bit about what you're doing, and then Essie Mathis, who's our program consultant, and I will go back and forth with some questions because we each have one of your books, and so we'll be directing those questions based on the books. So awesome. I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. I am honored. You know, anytime you call me, if I can, I'm there. You know, the last time you called me, it took me 4 days to get there and get back, but I was able to impact 60 countries at the same time. So,
yes.
Okay.
I know that was an international trip, right?
Well, well, the lady called me, you connect me to and say, do you mind coming to Georgia? You're going to Georgia. And I was like, sure, Georgia, it's only about an hour flight. She said, no, sweetie, I'm talking about the country, Georgia. Yeah. I was like, okay. I had just came back from Tanzania and Nigeria. So I was like, by the end of the year, I was like, okay. But, oh my goodness, my work is all connected to my story. You know, everything I do, I try to, everything that I create, develop, or do, even write, I want to do things that uplift, inspire, and give hope to those that were deemed hopeless. You know, because I know what that feel like. You'll find out a little bit more in my autobiography that we'll be discussing. But 16 years ago, I was one of those people that was deemed hopeless. It was my 83rd arrest and my 66th conviction. And they told me that, pretty much treated me and told me that there was no hope for me. Well, there was. And here I am. I was able to not only begin my healing, and mind you, I was pregnant in prison. And it's nothing worse than a pregnant inmate in the eyes of the world. You know what I mean? It's nothing worse. So just being pregnant with my daughter and trying to sober up after 19 years of drug addiction and almost 20 years on the streets as a homeless person, and being told I was mentally ill, you know, over and over again, and being over medicated. So I know what it's like. So when I started my healing process, I knew I had to go back and try to bring other people through, because I know that support was needed. So the work I do. So Tonier Cain International is my parent company for all the other things that I do. But it's mostly the company where we do trainings. We train on trauma-informed care. We, oh my goodness. So we do all kinds of different trainings. We do peer trainings. We do the Rich Approach training. We do the Heal the Healers training. So it's all about training and helping different agencies to implement trauma-informed care. In 2008, when SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, funded the National Center for Trauma-Informed Care, they brought me in as their team leader. And I led that team for the first 5 years that the National Center existed. And then I resigned and started my own company. But in those 5 years, my job was to go around and train the country. So I've trained agencies in every state, including Alaska and Hawaii. And now with my private company, we go abroad, and my work is used all over the world. So that is our training company. Neen Cares is my nonprofit. So you'll see Neen a lot because Neen was my street name. Neen was the name that was deemed hopeless. And I keep Neen in it because Neen means something different now. Back then, when you see me walk down the streets, they would go, oh, they go dirty crackhead Neen. You know, this filthy crackhead Neen, and I always smell bad, I always look bad. I was homeless on the streets. I was a drug addict for so long. But now if you Google me, you'll see words that say amazing, powerful, inspiring. So I keep that name so people can see how people can transform, how that name transformed to be the person that I was originally supposed to be anyway, once my trauma was identified, addressed, and treated. So we started Neen Care. Neen Care is my nonprofit where we provide free services for trauma survivors. And we have locations, we have in Florida and in Maryland. We have our offices provide free case management, free peer support. And we just had 5 women trained to be doulas, to be certified doulas, to start working with young African-American women that don't have the support in their pregnancy. So we're offering that as well. And we have trauma houses. We have one trauma house that is in renovation phase. We should have women coming to that program. And by the second week of November, and we're going to keep our partners. We call them partners because I make sure my staff refer to anybody we work with as partners, because it forces them to meet people where they're at. It's no longer that separation. You don't call anybody clients. No, you're the partner. You're partners, because when we think about partnership, we think of equals, right? We think about meeting people where they at. So our partners, when they come into our programs or when they come to our centers to get help, they get lifetime support. We call it life support because trauma impacts an individual life throughout their whole life. You know, so we stick with them and we keep them all the way to all the way to home ownership, and then and continue to work with them. So that is the nonprofit. And I'm a film producer. I actually have my own film production company called Purposeful Entertainment, and where we are producing TV and film content that inspire, uplift, and give hope. We have a film that I shot in Nigeria last year called The Unseen Villages, about the women returning to the villages after being kidnapped by Boko Haram and the trauma they experienced. And then we have Walking Through Bullets, which is a gang-related film, and it talks about community trauma. And then we have a TV show that's called Restoration, that talks about restoring lives and things like that. So all of our content is about helping people to change. I have a publishing house and a speakers bureau, and I'm about to launch a product line. And so, yeah, I stay very busy.
Yes, you do stay busy. And before we started, you were showing me the product line and telling me a little bit about that. So do you want to talk a little bit about the product line, and then I'm going to turn
this free marketing, baby. This free marketing. So when I started my healing process, now mind you, I've been raped and beat down so many times, I stopped counting them. I couldn't even count all the times. And so, but what was happening was when I started my trauma treatment, I was healing on the inside. But every time I would look in the mirror, all the scars that I had, you know, were still there. And I used to shoot cocaine. And whenever I shot cocaine, we called them coke bugs. I used to think of bugs was all over my body, so I would pick hunks of meat out of my skin, thinking I'm picking bugs. So I end up with all these black marks on my face, and I used to shoot in my neck. I had track marks all over my body. And so it's a reminder of why I use drugs anyway, to numb from the trauma and all of that. And so I started to use shea butter and vitamin E and cocoa butter. I just used all this stuff, and my skin started to heal. So I contacted a laboratory, and I worked with them to come up with my a formula with the same stuff that I use. So I have my shea butter line, and it's called Hope by Tonier Cain, and it actually have a little story on it and tell why I created the line. And we have African soap, and then I did a whole fitness wellness thing. So we have all those different products as well. And I just love it. We have all different types of shea butter and sizes. So I'm very excited about this. And this silhouette is it's really me and my daughter. That's us for real. And they're talking about that generational cycle being broken, that inner child that needs that healing. And so, yeah, I'm excited about this. It's going to launch October 28th, and the proceeds go to my nonprofit, which supports trauma survivors. So, yeah.
Incredible. And my husband says that I have all kinds of lotions and potions, because anytime anyone Black comes out with a product, I buy it. Am I gonna like this? And shea butter is so big now, so I like the bathroom is just, I had to get it organized to organize all of my products. So I will be adding that too, and I'll just say, hey, you just got to deal with the lotions and potions. I'm not encroaching on his space yet, but
I know, but shoot, my husband, he uses mine too. I said, so I was like, do you want me to come up with a butter for you? I mean, seriously, brother. You know, he was like, look, my scar is almost gone. Look. I'm like, tell the world, don't tell me. I already know. Go out there and sell it.
well, that is very very exciting. I can't wait to try the product. So Essie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening again. I am absolutely delighted to be a part of this production tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you, Angelyn. And for those who are on the call that may not be familiar with your books, I just want to hold up for a moment. Hopefully, can you see this clearly? Okay, so for others that are on the call, I just want you to see the cover of the book that I really had to scramble to get my hands on quickly before this time together tonight. And by the grace of God, I just got it a couple days ago, and I stayed up until 1:30 a.m. this morning because I was not going to sleep until I got to the end of this book. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I did. I already know that 1 hour is not going to suffice. So I hope that I can get a few pertinent questions in before the evening is over. First of all, I want to say to you, thank you for your courage, because from the moment I opened the preface and the introduction, I immediately recognized it took a tremendous amount of courage for you to approach the subject of your trauma from a child. And I remember getting to the introduction, and I saw a phrase that I want to ask you about, because I say it myself often, but it was the first time I had seen it in print. And right on the page 3, you said, where there is breath, there is hope. And as I kept reading, I paused and I thought, let me write that down, because I'm always saying that to people who feel like giving up. But here it is in written form in your book. And then as I got toward the end of the book, I saw it again, and then I saw it again. So I want to ask you, if you could just touch on that just briefly. At what point did that phrase become real for you?
Well, yeah, I think for me, in my healing, it took me a while. I mean, everything happened so quickly, but what I had was a whole bunch of people that was willing to kick doors in for me. And I started to I started to feel value in that. I seen the value in that, meaning I could see that somebody seen worth in me. and that they wasn't willing to just give up on me like everybody else. I mean, you read the book, I had no one. And so they were telling me, Tonier, you can get better. You know what I mean? You're still alive. You're still alive. You're not dead. And so, and I just used to tell myself, where there's breath, there's hope. As long as I'm breathing, there's hope. There's hope. No matter how bad it gets, there's hope. So it became my motto. Wherever you see anything with my name on it, you'll see where there's breath, there's hope.
Thank you.
So I had already read that book several years ago. I said, okay, I'm going to do this book since this is the newest one. And in my busy life, this is such a great read.
Yeah, right.
Book, as I showed you, I showed you Nikichi's book. It's a little bit thicker, but this is a guidebook. It's a workbook, and it is really, as he said, having the courage to talk about these things that, for most of us, we're pretty vulnerable if we talk about relationships with our girlfriends, relationships with our parents, relationships with our spouses or significant others. And you were really, really honest in this book. And the other thing about this book that I found very interesting is the fact that you are a Christian woman, and I'm Christian, Essie is as well. But the book is not necessarily, if you're not a Christian, it still works.
Right.
Right? It still flows. You can still take some of the life lessons that you have in here and the stories that may resonate with you. And I just found it to be a book that, I was reading it at night because that's generally when I read. And I found it to be so cathartic and also spiritual, as well as healing, which is what you do. So one of the first things, of course, I'm going to pull to is the beginning of our healing from the past. And you have a proverb in here: trust the Lord with all your heart, lean unto your own understanding, acknowledge him in all ways, and he will direct your path. And you say, that is scripture I would hold tightly when dealing with my relationships with my adult kids, so one day we can be a family, a loving family, a godly family. So talk a little bit about what that means to you, what God means to you in your life, and how you, as you say, get people where they are, because not everyone is there, right? Not everyone is religious necessarily, but people have to pull on something, right? They have to have hope for something. So talk a little bit about you and you getting there and how you work with others who may not be where you are.
Well, so faith became my number one tool. I talk a lot about having a toolkit. When you have trauma, you need to make sure you got a toolkit, to help you to utilize those tools to self-soothe and self-regulate at any given moment. Because just because we heal, we don't forget. You know what I mean? The only difference between me now, the difference between me now and me 16 years ago when I was out there using drugs to numb from my trauma, is I just changed my tools. That's all. I got healthier tools that works for me and not against me. And so when I was in prison pregnant, I tried something sincerely that I never tried before, and that was I cried out to God. I never sincerely did it. I knew how to pretend to be a Christian when I went to court. You know what I mean? I had a rosary on. I ain't know how to pray. I ain't say, Hail Mary, nothing. You know what I mean? I ain't no understand that. I put the cross on. I'm standing for the judge, the little pocket Bible that they give you, the little Christian people give you when they come, the ministry give me one of them, go court. So I know how to do that. But I didn't really understand. I didn't understand who God was, and certainly didn't understand who Jesus was. And so I sincerely cried out to God, and I started to feel different because I started to read the Word of God, and I started to take the Word of God on, and I believe it to be what the Word of God said it was. And so when I transitioned to the trauma program, I just took God with me. You know what I mean? Usually, I played a Christian, but Jesus, you stay back in prison. I got this now. The gate open. I got this. But I decided to take him with me. And because I spent a lot of time in prayer, because I didn't group up with all the girls doing their thing, getting up with guys that, end up relapsing and all that. I studied the Word. I prayed a lot, and it worked for me. So it became my number one tool, and it still is. It still is. And so that's my faith is a huge part in it's my umbrella for my healing. And that quote, lean not on your own understanding, but trust God with all your heart. And that had to come into play, because when my kids came back, you know, I had a lot of hope that things would be like sunshine, but they were storms. I mean, they were like brimstones and hell and things like that, because when they came back with resentment. And I didn't expect that. I should have, but I didn't. You know, everything else was going like this for me. So I'm like, ooh, God is a God of restoration. We got this, you know. But they came back, and it was rough. So I try not to keep thinking about lean on my own understanding, because my understanding was like, hold up, we ain't doing this. You know what I mean? It's just back off or whatever. And I did have to do that for a while and go into prayer, but I had to trust God to work it all out and bring it to where it was supposed to be. And we're supposed to go through all that. But as far as meet people where they at, you know, we're not supposed to force anything on people. Certainly not God. God don't want no shotgun wedding with his bride. Don't want nobody smacking nobody upside the head and say, get Jesus. He want a loving relationship in return. And you know what I mean? And that's what we're supposed to do when we work with people. You know, it's so funny because the reason why I say my staff can only refer to people as partners, because there's this thing about these clients and professionals, and how when they call themselves clients, I train providers all over the country. They actually expect people to get to them. Like, why are you setting expectations for anybody? So when people come into our program, we ask them this: what are your expectations for us? We have none for you, except that you just give us a chance. And that's how you meet people. You respect me, I respect you. Oh, we put all these guidelines and rules all posted. What? No. First of all, what are your expectations? If you don't have any, do you mind thinking about some expectations that you may have for our organization for you? And that's the way, because these are people's lives. And when we respect people and understand who we are in their life, we can understand how we're supposed to back up and just be the GPS design. And I know I'm not going to go to my train. I'm not going to start training, because, you know, but we are only supposed to be the GPS system for people, give them turn by turn directions to get to their goals. And when they make that wrong turn, like we do sometimes, be willing to reroute them right away and stop wasting time and what went wrong. When you put an address in your GPS system, when you get off that wrong exit or make that wrong turn, what do you expect your GPS system to do? Reroute you immediately. Wouldn't you be mad as your GPS system said, why you do that? That wasn't a part of the plan. No, you expect to get back on track. And that's what I'm talking about, meeting people where they at. You know what I mean? And there is no separation in this. It's just partnership.
Thank you very much.
Actually, that's a great segue into the next question that I'd like to ask you about. There are two quotes that I want to highlight. One from chapter 5 that talks about where you talk about hard times, and one from chapter 7. I'm going to read the quotes, and then my question related to these two quotes is how do these two statements that you made in your book equip you, enable you, help you to address the trauma needs of other partners that are coming in? So in chapter 5, you said, I didn't slip back into the old life, I was pushed. And that really got my attention, because at that point in the story, it was apparent to me that you had a desire to come out of the addiction. And then in chapter 7, you said, I found security in the dangers of the streets.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how do those two statements just really position you to address what's going on with the partners?
Just understanding that, you know, there's a lot of times where, first of all, we bring people into when we bring people into our our programs or in our offices, what we know is this: the first thing we need to do is help them to feel safe and see what their needs are. You know what I mean? And for me, you know, I talk about how, like, my first drug counselor, I did everything I was supposed to do. I went to the drug program. I did everything, and I ended up getting raped by my drug counselor. Where do you go from there? You know what I mean? And all the things that just kept happening. And I always, it's funny because people always ask me, well, Tony, your daughter was the one who got you. She was your miracle child. Hold up. All my kids, I wanted to be a mother to all of them. You know what I mean? The only difference was things were put into place to make it possible for me. So when we're working with our partners today, what we keep in mind is, what do we need to make sure that's put into place to help them not only obtain it, but maintain it? Because we have a lot of programs that want to obtain it, but don't give us what we need to maintain it in the community.
Thank you.
So I'm going to skip around a bit. I was going to go to the husband trigger.
Woo.
I'm going to skip the husband trigger, and I'm going to go to a journal assignment.
Number book.
The husband trigger, but it's in this book, so I'm gonna come back to that if we have time, because there may be some folks who joined us that want to ask some questions. So that's why I'm going to come back to that if time allows. I will come back for those of you who don't have the book, The Husband Trigger. But I'm going to look at the journal assignment number 9, and the reason why I say that this book is for everyone. You don't have to be, Christian to appreciate and get things out of this. Is journal assignment number 9 is, we all know people who've let their past limit their expectations for the future. And your question is, have you allowed fear to block your success? And the assignment is, write down what you have yet to accomplish in life. Write down obstacles you faced reaching your goals, and then write down your abilities that support reaching your goals. And I just thought that was just such a clear and easy way to just get through the things that are holding you back and why they're holding you back. Because we all have those things, right, that are holding us back for whatever reason. It could be trauma, but it may not be trauma necessarily. We may not know what it is, the fear of success, the fear of failure, there's all of these things. So talk a little bit about how you went through your process after you realized you talk about God, but besides that piece of it, getting to the place where you could actually, you sat down and wrote this book and you had those thoughts, like just to get people to think about those things, and how that helped guide you with everything else that you're doing now.
Oh, absolutely. So it is. It's so, because in our minds, we always have like, this is what I want to do. And it doesn't, nobody have to run around and do all the stuff that I'm doing. I'm not saying that. Some people just wanted to stay sober, or some people just wanted to be able to start visiting their kids to get their kids back. It's when I work with people that buy the book, and I go through sessions with them every week as a group and work with them through the journal. And everybody is in their own place in their own time with stuff. But if we don't write it down and kind of look at it, because it's easy to think about it and not, but you don't process it as well when you look at it. And for me, when I started thinking about what I want to do, the first thing I remember somebody saying, surround you by people that you want to be like. I remember somebody telling me that somewhere. And I said, okay, when they brought me in as the team leader for National Center for Trauma Informed Care, I didn't have no higher education, right? I was like a few years out of prison. You know what I mean? I still, I was still rough around the edges and all that. Still rough around the edges, but smooth out a little bit. But so I remember we had to go to this meeting on Capitol Hill to respond to the healthcare, the healthcare reform and all of that was going on back then in the Obama administration. And we had to go there. And I remember this colleague, this white guy, who was one of my colleagues. he kind of leaned over and he said to me, he said, "You don't know what the hell they're talking about, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't. But I'm going to stay at this table and I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn." And I took that, and now I'm considered one of the leading experts in trauma-informed care. But I remember somebody saying that you don't know, but I was real clear about truth. I don't. All these terminologies y'all talking about, I don't know, I don't. But I'm gonna stay here. I was invited at this table. I'm gonna stay here. And as a result, I got promoted, and now I run my own company. You know what I mean? So it's just, but I had to look at that and I had to acknowledge that. Because there was fear of going to the table and staying at the table every time. When I knew everybody that knew me from my office knew I didn't know what they were talking about. but guess what? Samson wanted me there, and Samson was paying me to be there, and I was staying there. And so yeah, so that's I was able to look at, I had a clear picture by writing it down, and say, okay, this is what I learned today. Yeah, I was afraid, but look, next time I remember this term, I remember that. So it was work.
That's a good philosophy to think about. I remember when I started doing criminal justice work, my first day on the job, when I was working for Families Against Mandatory Minimums, given their props, my supervisor took me to a meeting, and there were 15 people. And I remember I counted in the room, there were 15 people there who had been doing criminal justice work forever. And they started talking, and I had no idea what they were talking about. This is 2002. I had no idea what they were talking about. None. I mean, there were people like Vinnie Schiraldi, you know, who's like justice for juveniles. There were all these people at this table. And I think about that time that there I was at this table trying to learn these new concepts and ideas. I came from the fashion world, right? And human rights and civil rights, not specifically criminal justice. So it was an eye-opening experience, but I stuck with it, and here I am, however many years later, still doing this work. Now, no one could call me and say I'm an expert, but I know some shit.
And that's right.
And you know some people.
I know a few people. So I'll turn it back over to Essie.
Okay, thank you. From the very start of reading your book, inside of myself, I started rooting for that little girl. And every chapter I would say, she's got to find her voice. She has to find her voice. And I can't tell you how relieved I was when I finally got to turned the page, and you just had enough with just all the stuff that had been done to you from a young age. And so I wonder, with the partners that you're dealing with, is that an area that you work with the partners on? Is there anything that you do to help them to discover their own personal voice, and to help them to recognize that they have agency and that they have value and validity and worth?
And a lot of our work is based on empowerment, you know, so what we do, we help them to identify their strengths. For so long, they've been told about their weaknesses. Nobody tells them what was good, what's right with them. Everybody tells them what's wrong with them. We tell them what's right with them. We tell them things that we see. Even as the progress is like, okay, well, we set you up for a job interview. So you cussed the guy out last week, and you know, but the week before that, you didn't even go. So that was progress. You actually went there and cussed the guy out, you know what I mean? So things like that. So maybe next week you go and maybe not cuss the guy out, you know, and they'll laugh, you know what I mean? Because we look at it as progress no matter what it is. You know what I mean? We see strength in everything, because the fact that they are still alive and come to us. First of all, we are honored. We feel like it's a privilege for someone to come and entrust their life with us. It's just, we look at it as an honor, and it's a heart's work. And that's what we do, you know, because there is a lot of suffering, there is a lot of pain, and there is that scared hidden child that still haven't talked about it. But when we talk about trauma-informed care, we know that people have the right not to disclose. We don't force somebody to tell us their story. First of all, trauma-informed practices are using universal precaution. We just assume that everybody we work with had some form of trauma. You're not going to hurt them if they don't, because trauma-informed care is treating them the right way anyway. And so we just use universal precaution, and we just look for all the great stuff, all the good stuff about them.
Thank you. Angelyn?
So I'm going to go to coping with being triggered by my husband. I'm going to go there because this is a part that I thought really showed your ability to just be vulnerable and truthful and honest. This is real, right? And like I said, even if you don't think that it's trauma that you're dealing with and dealing with other people, whether it's your significant other or your mom or your dad, siblings, whatever, it could trigger things that they do could trigger, like it could have been an ex, or whatever. So I don't know if you have the book in front of you, because if you don't, then I'll read it. But if you do, then I was gonna have you read it.
I got it. I copied right here somewhere. Okay, what are we talking about?
On page 56.
Okay, 56. Okay, yep.
So before you get to the coping with being triggered by my husband, there's a paragraph right above that. So if you just read from the paragraph above that through that coping section.
You talking about where it starts in marriage?
Uh-huh.
In marriage, being a trauma survivor and a woman of God doesn't always align for me. I know how it's supposed to be, as well as the reality of these two roles. Although they're two separate things, they must be lived simultaneously. That's not always easy. The word of God tells me to act this way or that way as a woman and as a wife. Meanwhile, it's pretty clear as a trauma survivor, things often trigger me and you find yourself struggling to be obedient to God and your mate.
All right. So then coping with being triggered,
Mm-hmm.
how you deal with it is, you say my husband is very affectionate and gentle, but even so, there are times I simply can't be touched. It takes a very patient and loving man to be rejected over and over again. Who can blame him? That's why it's extremely important to first discuss your past trauma and then know your triggers with your mate. This way, she will know the rejection is not personal. It's how trauma survivors must ground themselves and self-regulate. I had this discussion with my husband very early on when we were dating. It has been a challenging process for both of us, but well worth it. We have tailored our marriage around me being a trauma survivor. Now, when I say I am being triggered, he knows to back off and allow me the space I need to move past the trigger. Like marriage, there's no playbook for this because each episode is different. Different tools must be pulled out of my toolkit to self-regulate depending on the circumstances. And there's more to it, but that so captured me because I'm married and we celebrated 5 years in September.
Oh, wow.
In September. And couples have challenges. I mean, for the most part, it's really good, but there are challenges. You're two different people coming together, trying to build a life and get along and do things. And sometimes he sees things one way, I see things another. And so reading that, I got to the place where I said, okay, I need to figure out what my triggers are, and then communicate that, because that's not always what we do. Right? Is the communication piece is not always what we do in any relationship that we're in. So talk a little bit about how and I've met your husband. He's a sweetheart. See, to me, he's a sweetheart because I don't have to live with him every day, right?
For the most part,
he's a supportive sweetheart.
He is.
So, but talk a little bit about you learning that process that, okay, I've just got to let him know what is going on.
I think that's him coming down the steps. Adrian. It's like a ring-a-ding-ding bell. You want to come say hi really quick? we're talking about the chapter about marriage. And
Oh,
say hi to
hi, how's it going?
Hi, Adrian. How you doing? Long time no see.
How's it
Put you
going?
on the hot, put you on the hot seat.
Yeah. How's it going though? All is well. You guys are being, I mean, you being safe.
Yes.
Okay, we're not yet. We ain't got that much time. So, but, so they were asking me, I was telling them about, see, now you get a twofer, right? So
Right.
I was telling that you was talking about the coping with trauma, how you had to know from the beginning about my trauma to kind of help you to cope and be rejected and things like that. And it was tremendous work. It is tremendous work.
Yes, it is. And, I just thank God though that, that there are some resources that's available. I met Tony. I was taking a trauma, of course, one of the courses that she was featured in. So, at the end of the day, sometimes it feels almost like you're building a plane and flying it at the same time, as we like to say, but you always have to not think about yourself and just be selfless, dealing with, folks who are impacted by trauma, and Tony always like to say, you just got to meet people where they are. You know what I mean?
See, I'm training him well.
You know what I mean?
We see.
And and that's pretty much all you can do. Is just be patient.
And the thing is, some of the traumas, the triggers, like my husband's like, he always like to, he'll like to buy stuff from people on the streets, to help them out and stuff like that. So I try to control my triggers by buying cologne that I know that would work well with me, smell cologne for him, that it won't trigger me because smells triggers me. Like, and so I would go and I buy, it's just one, it was a Calvin Klein, it's just one Eternity, it works. So, but sometimes if he runs out and he doesn't tell me, he'll buy the oils on the streets. It smells nothing like Eternity. I don't know why did he think it, but I will come and it sets me off. I was like, what is that? Because it is a trigger. It does remind me of a past predator. But yeah, my husband's doing great things too. I'm gonna send you his book. You got to get his book.
Yes, please.
You know his story. You got to get his book. He was life plus 20, with, and had to fight to get that back because he was wrongfully convicted of that. But I'll send you that.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. You're going to be on YouTube and even more famous, Adrian.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No.
Okay.
All right, turn it back to Essie.
Okay, thank you. I want to visit one of the many traumatic experiences you lived through. In chapter 3, you talk about harsh realities. And when I read that, it immediately reminded me of what we, especially as Black women in this country, are still dealing with from a healthcare perspective. And specifically, you were recounting the experience of when you tried to kill yourself. And I wrote this down. You said no doctors or nurses, no doctors in the hospital, no nurses even questioned the possibility that you had attempted suicide. They didn't even cross their mind that it was possible that you were trying to take your life, and there was no follow-up. There was no quote trauma care. There was no delving into what possibly could have brought you to that situation. You were just basically treated as a cardboard cutout paper doll, like, oh, okay, clean her up and send her home. And that just really highlighted for me how much has not changed, especially in the culture that we live in. So can you touch on that for a moment?
Absolutely. And that's just one of many incidents, but here I am being transported by ambulance, and where I had taken a whole bottle of pills, and they talked to my mother, who said, oh, she overdosed on her own medication, and they took her word for it. You know what I mean? Instead, he questioned me. No one asked me, are you okay? What, why would you take too many of your own pills, or nothing, which was a lie. It was somebody else's pills, my cousin's pills. I was trying to kill myself. And they just put the tube down my throat to get the choker on my stomach, and that was it. And it's so much of that's going on. When I used to get cut or battered down on the streets, I would go to the emergency room. They would put staples in me, staple up my head or whatever, and don't even call the police. Obviously somebody attacked me, and the police wasn't even called in an emergency room, which we know it is for a lot of other people. So, but they would see me coming in a lot, being injured, and it just good. Well, she'd be back. Just put those staples in her, and that was it.
So thank you so much, Tonier. And thank your husband so much for me. My husband is so loving and so supportive and all of that. And it really is a blessing to have someone to share your life with, right? And I'm just so happy for you. As I said in the beginning, so proud of you and so glad that, you guys are trying to build this together. And I really, really admire that a lot. I want to give the folks who are joining us an opportunity to ask a question or say anything, because I think that what you bring is just so vibrant and so necessary for women, women who have been through trauma, women who are going through trauma, women who don't even know that they are dealing with trauma. And your story is so inspiring. So I'm going to open it up and see if anyone wants to say anything. There's so many other questions I could ask you, but
Yes, me too.
we have about 10 more minutes. I want to make sure if there's anyone that wants to say anything, and you are all unmuted, and please feel free to just jump in.
So this is Nikichi, and I just want to jump in because I have another call that I got to get ready for. But Neen, you are just so very inspiring. And not only are you so inspiring, I am just in awe at everything you have been able to accomplish. And think you just said, within 16 years, I mean, that is absolutely and completely amazing. So my hat goes off to you, my sister. I'm looking forward to getting your book. I know Angelyn had been talking about you for a while, but this is the first time I got to see you or meet you or, virtually and all. So I just want to say, keep on keeping on, my sister.
Thank you, sister.
Hi, this is Taz. I just want to say that I admire the courage that you have to stand up and tell your story and live in your truth and address trauma. Trauma is something that I talk about every time that I'm speaking or talking about participatory defense. And there's so many issues that people don't know that they have, that this unjust system does not address. Trauma that leads us sometimes to the things that we do that lead us to incarceration. And it's amazing when you find someone that's not afraid to step into who they are and speak their truth, because your past is what made you who you are today. And from my first time meeting you and seeing your face, I admire you and I appreciate you telling your story. And thanks to your husband for sharing you with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if no one else has anything else, Etsy, do you have another question?
I do. I'm just a bit overfull from reading your book the last couple of days. One of the things that, a lot of things, one of the many things that resonated with me as I was reading through Heal and Neen is that there are so many other stories in your story There are, I mean, literally, when I think about that book, you could write 5 more books just based on that one, if you had the time, of course. But it's like, oh my God, there are bigger stories. And one of the bigger stories that I went to sleep thinking about and woke up this morning, and I woke up thinking about the phrase collective trauma. And reading through your story, which unfortunately is the same story that so many young boys and girls continue to live with on a daily basis. It's horrific. But I can't help but just pause and say how much we are still dealing with generational trauma. I mean, even in the community where you grew up or basically raising yourself, to think about the situation, 2 situations in particular. One is as a teenager, the day that you bolted out of the apartment door to go to school, and your mother basically physically attacked you in the street, beat you down in front of all these people, and nobody intervened. Nobody stopped her. Nobody questioned why she was beating you. Nobody came to your aid. Nobody said anything. And to me, that was just horrendous. And then the other instance was a little bit later, and I think it was early in chapter 4, when you were, well, actually underage, and you said that everyone in the neighborhood bars knew that I was underage, but no one questioned me being there and drinking. To me, that's just a serious indictment against the culture/community. And I just wondered if you wanted to had any comments related to those 2 incidents.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's true. And that was what pushed me into the suicide attempt, because it's like my mother, here I am trying to go to school, she beat me, and there was no help. There was nothing. As I'm being beat down in front of the community, they were laughing, they were all, and it's just, where do you go from there? You know what I mean? And it's like, I love my mother, but I want to be with her, but I can't be with her. And there was no help. And when you see a whole community watch this happen and don't do anything, or don't help, or don't try to walk behind you, ask you if you're okay, and everybody laughing, and it's just, it was pushed over the edge, and when I became, because I was dating this older man, much older man, my first husband, that my mother signed the marriage license for me to marry. So he was like this, you know what I mean? It's funny because he was just at church, he was on the choir. Everybody knew that I was, like, today he could go jail. Today by law, he would be convicted of being a pedophile. You know what I mean? And but back then, I mean, he would take me to church, he would take me to these bars, and they all knew that I was, very young. I was way underage, and I couldn't even sign my own marriage license. My mother signed. He befriended her by giving her all the alcohol she could possibly drink, and that was the life I lived in the community.
What's scary to think is that there are probably girls going through this right now, right? That we don't know that they're being victimized in this way. And the fact that we are dealing with a pandemic where people are forced to be in their homes for, extended periods of time is probably very challenging.
Yeah.
So Tonier, I would like you to tell people where they can find you.
Yeah.
Toniercain.com, just my name, Toniercain.com. There you could see everything that I'm doing. You could find out where I'm about to be. And if you go to contact, if any of the companies that you're trying to get in touch with anybody, like if you want to be a part, if somebody wanted to find out how to become a speaker in that Speakers Bureau, how to post their book, all these different things, how to get in contact with the nonprofit. The nonprofit's needscare.org, but toniercain.com takes you to everything. And there's a chat box that somebody will answer. If you chat with them, like you say, I want to talk to Tonier, I don't want to talk to you. You know what I mean? And they'll say, we'll refer to my office, the main office, for them to schedule a talk, or, whatever. It's all there. It's all there. Toniercain.com.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the time that you guys gave me. And you know, girlfriend, I do anything, anytime for you. And it's nice meeting you. Thank you for reading Healing Me. And I know it's not an easy book. I had pastors tell me they couldn't get through it. So I know it's, I always tell people sometimes just go back, read chapter 10, then go back and read the book because
Yeah, right.
it's tough. It's
tough.
graphic and it's tough.
Well,
It's-
the quality of your writing, though, makes it easier to read, because typically I don't handle other people's pain very well. I was nervous about reading it, but when I picked it up, I couldn't stop reading. I was reading it in the middle of doing other things.
Yeah.
You have such a way that the story, though very deeply painful, it flows. And before I got to the end of it, I said, this woman has to believe in miracles. The fact that you're alive, it's like, and then I turned a few pages and there was the word miraculous right at the top of the next page. So thank you for persevering.
Yeah, thank you. All glory to God. I take no credit. All glory to God.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, my sister.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Blessings upon you.
Bye-bye. Good night.